Hey, what's going on, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to GovCon Empire. I'm Derek Green, also known as Theo, former federal contracting officer and city procurement official. I about take my words out, all right? I have those days where I can't talk, and that's all right. But look, this is a very, very important episode because we're going to talk about a lot of very important things. In fact, one of the biggest requests that I've been getting from the emails is the middleman theory. Yes, I finally decided to go ahead and do a synopsis on that because a lot of people are getting in trouble. And you know what? I don't know where this came from, this whole middleman theory. So by the way, you know how I do it. If you binge this channel and go through the videos, I'm very, very big on telling you the things that's actually going to help you. I'm not about to lie to you. That being said, we also expect you to be real businessmen, real businesswomen, which means you cannot be lazy. So on this particular video, we will not be flashing any FAR references on the screen. We will not be doing any B-rolls. It's time for you to get your pencil and pen out, or get your whatever you use to take notes. You need to pull that out right now and follow me, okay? I'm going to give you some FAR references, some regulatory things that you can type, okay? And you can use that so many ways. But it's important to know the way I think. If I just flash everything on the screen, that is making it too easy for you and it's not going to stick. So you'd be surprised how classical learning works. If you have the discipline to actually read and write things out, you will actually remember it better. You'll start remembering to anchor those things to your proposal and it's going to help you. But let's get right into this because I know a lot of you get frustrated when you hear a lot of fluff at the beginning of videos. Okay, so middleman theory. Does the middleman work? Absolutely, positively, no. You cannot misrepresent your capabilities to the government. Point blank simple. As a federal contracting officer who has worked for Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as City of Houston, I am going to let you know the truth. You cannot misrepresent your capability statement. And by the way, when you try this whole middleman theory crap, I'm going to tell you that is exactly what you're doing. You're committing procurement fraud. And not only are you at risk for being debarred from the government or working from the government, you can also put yourself at risk for prison time. Yes, you heard it coming directly from the GovCon authority. You can go to jail. It is very serious, especially if we're talking about a high dollar contract that involves tens of millions of dollars. So let's get right into this. In fact, I also you're in luck. Look, I pulled up the FAR right here. It's in front of me. So we're going to read directly from the FAR as well as some notes that I took. All right. Now, most people getting in trouble in GovCon, they're not confused. They're just lazy. They don't read, they hustle, they guess, they hope. And if you know anything about me, I hate that hustle word because the government does not need hustlers. Hustlers hustle people. Hustlers jump right from one money grab to the next. They're not focused on the important things, which are compliance, policy, problem solving, the things that you hear me talk about over and over and over on this channel. And they think that the government does not notice. Yes, they notice and they are taking mental notes. In fact, every federal agency right now has a modernization project going on so that they can start recognizing these things much faster. You guys got to remember, AI is there for a reason. So you do not want to be the person who gets caught with your pants down. All right. Now let's get deeper into this. So the federal system is built on documentation, audits, and prosecution. We ain't even got to go there. Y'all know what that means. All right. So we're going to start off your first FAR anchor. Pause the video when I tell you these things so you can write it down. FAR. And remember, the FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. The acronym FAR. If you don't already know that, you are already losing. In fact, if you're working with consultants and people who are telling you they can help you and they can do this for you, If they're not talking to you about the FAR, they do not know what the hell they are talking about. Because if they are not basing everything that they tell you off of the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, they have nothing backing them up. They're basically throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. All right? Now, so the FAR, your first FAR anchor for today is FAR 3.1003. And you can put an A in parentheses. Once again, that's FAR 3.1-003. FAR 3.1003 with an A in parentheses. Standards of conduct. Google it. Government business shall be conducted in a manner above reproach. In other words, if you fake your role, fake your value, or fake your numbers, you are already out of compliance. All right, so the illegal middleman or paper prime, and we're going to talk about how people get caught. But basically, what it's telling you is that the illegal middleman or the paper prime, it's illegal. It is 100% prohibited. But you're in luck because we're going to spend some time telling you the things that don't work and then tell you the things that actually does work. All right? But a paper prime, it's exactly how it sounds, all right? You're the prime on paper, but you're not really doing all the work. You've basically stitched a whole bunch of pieces together. In fact, I talked about that in the video called the Houston Hustler story. Hilarious, right? Go back, just go a few videos back and you'll see it. But the paper prime, this means on paper, you look like a boss. You are like a straight emperor or empress on paper. But the truth is, you're not performing any of the work. You're not managing it. In fact, you're just getting everything. You're getting a contract, subbing it out. Get a contract and sub it out. In fact, there was a video that came out a while back that got very, very popular. And a guy was talking about how you can build a whole business being a middleman. It was a gentleman. I don't know his name. I'm not a content creator. I come from the world of working inside of the federal government. So I don't really care about who else is out there, to be honest with you. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to teach you so that you all can stay out of trouble and actually do this the right way. But anyway, he was some guy talking about how you can start a federal contracting business just by being the middleman. Get it, sub it out. Get it, sub it out. That's called a pass-through. And you think you're building a contracting portfolio, but you're really building a case file. And you have to understand, there are some people who sit in the offices. They will let you do this. They'll let you hang yourself more and more. And then when they are ready to prosecute you, my goodness. I mean, some people have done this and have racked up probably more than 30, 40, $50 million in contract awards. And remember, when prosecution comes, you're going to be prosecuted at a level worth 30, 40, $50 million. All right. Keep that in mind, not just for you, but for your loved ones. So a paper prime is someone who finds the contract, hires a subcontractor, does no real management, adds a fee, lies about it. That's not strategy, that's fraud. In fact, let's go to FAR subpart 52.215-23. Once again, pause, write it down. FAR 52.215-23. Limitations on pass-through charges. The government will not pay excessive pass-through charges. So basically, in layman's terms, if you do not manage the contract, control the contract, or add value, direct value, you are not allowed to charge for it. Now, let me talk about that a little bit. Do you know that the government can let you, they will allow you and those people who you subbed it out to, they will allow you to do 90 days worth of work. And somewhere within day 70 or 80, they're catching on to the point, catching on to the point that you don't really have site control. They can let you do all that and not pay you. Think about that. Think about the collateral damage that that's going to cause in the relationship between you and the person you subbed it out to. So let's say you have a construction contract, right? And you guys have done everything. You signed all the paperwork. They have a 15-man workforce that's out there on site doing asbestos abatement, demolition, whatever it is, structural engineering, whatever they have going on, whatever you have going on paper, right? They just spent 90 days. They just spent 90 days doing work that they're not going to pay for, that the government is not going to pay for. So now that VIG is on your head. So whatever happens in the streets between you and those people that you so-called subcontracted to, that's between y'all. Government ain't got nothing to do that. What you gonna do, call the government and say, hey, you better give us our money? Yeah. But when federal agents arrive at your doorstep for threatening federal officials, let me know how that works. All right. Now, let's keep this going. So we talked about FAR 52.215. And by the way, I need to make the screen a little bigger because I'm reading this directly from the FAR, and these words are tiny. Now, your next FAR anchor is FAR 52.215-22A, identification of subcontract effort. The person offering the services to the government, we're talking about you now. The offerer shall identify the percentage of work to be performed by the contractor and by each subcontractor. So basically, lying about who did the work is not marketing. It's a false statement. All right. So most fraud happens after the contract is awarded. The invoices, timesheets, reports, modifications, closeout. And understand this, every invoice is a legal statement. So just think about if you haven't really been on site and those project managers have been out there, basically, they've been out there watching what's going on site, and then you're on the phone talking about, yeah, we're doing this, yeah, we're doing that. But the truth is, you're not out there with the people who's actually doing it. Sometimes there will be random people walking up asking questions, and you have no idea that these are federal officials checking you out. You think that they're out there to see how the work is going, and they're out there building a case file for the fact that they know that you have not been doing the work. So that means those invoices, timesheets, reports, modifications, and all of the closeout documents, everything. There's so much involved in this. Okay, because a lot of times, so the government has the government has people in the 1103 series called industrial property. Those people will come out and manage the government property, GFE, government furnished equipment that's used in the performance of contracts. And those are the ones who will allow you to hang yourself. The project managers will allow you to hang yourself sometimes. The program managers, right? And that's bad because sometimes in some cases, you're using government equipment to help carry out these things. So all of this stuff is being considered. The fact that you not only misrepresented yourself, but you even had your hands on government equipment to keep this lie going. You see what I'm saying? And when I say you, I'm talking about the people who's on site doing it, because guess what? Whether you like it or not, even though you're not doing it, everybody who is out there, it falls on you. In fact, the federal government never holds the subcontractor responsible. They hold you responsible for everything, the offerer. All right, so keep that in mind. All of this stuff can be a case file to build up against you, especially if they decide to go all in with prosecution. Now, let's talk about debarment. FAR number 9, FAR 9. Let's go to FAR subpart 9. So, by the way, for those of you who have not been educated on this, the FAR is not broken up in chapters. It's broken up in subpars or parts. All right. FAR part 9, FAR part 9.406-2, causes for debarment. A contractor may be debarred for fraud or a criminal offense. It's telling you right here in plain English. Look, go online and get into that far. A contractor may be debarred for fraud and criminal offense or a criminal offense. All right. Debarment is just when they stop you from working, but you never know the personality of the person who's managing that contract from the inside. If they are one of those people who's just fed up with the BS, could be somebody who's been on the job for 30 years and they don't necessarily have the patience of a more recently of a younger contracting officer. They might come for your neck. They may say, you know what, forget debarment. We're not gonna let this be civil. We're not gonna let this be administrative. We're just gonna go. We're gonna go straight criminal on this. We're gonna attack this from the criminal offense angle. Now you have a much bigger problem on your head. However big that contract was, that's likely going to be added to whatever it takes to get you out of trouble. Okay? On top of all of your other legal expenses. That's if you're even in position to do that. Now, if you lie at any point, you can lose access to federal contracting completely or go to prison. All right? It's that simple. Now, let's talk about suspension. FAR Part 9.407-2. Once again, that is FAR, F-A-R, Part 9, FAR Part 9.407. In the parentheses, that's A. Suspension. Suspension may be imposed upon adequate evidence of fraud. In other words, they can shut you down before court even starts. And even if you don't have to go to court, here's why that's bad. Let's refer back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. Your people have been out there on site performing on this contract for 30 days, 60 days, or even 90 days, or even 120 days, and don't get paid. Imagine that. So you not only have those people not getting paid, you also have the government coming for your neck as well, and all of their legal people. All right. Now, this is where prison becomes possible. Once you lie, this leaves the FAR and enters into federal criminal law. Let's go to, now, you should, if you're working with the government, there's a few things you should be familiar with. The FAR, F-A-R, Federal Acquisition Regulation, the United States Code, write it down, and the CFR, Code of Federal Regulation. 18 U.S. Let's go with the United States Code. 18 U.S.C. 1001. False statements. Lying to the federal government is a crime. 18 U.S.C. 287. False claims. Once again, that's 18 U.S.C. 287. False claims. Submitting a false invoice is a crime. 31 U.S.C. 3729. False Claims Act. False claims equals treble damages plus penalties plus investigations. So in other words, once you lie, every invoice becomes evidence to build a case file for criminal charges. We saw a lot of this when I was a contracting officer for FEMA in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. All right, let's keep this moving. So now let's get on a more positive note. All right. All right. Now, if you stuck around for this long, that means that you are very serious about this game. Now, let's talk about the things that actually are allowed. Okay. Now, we just spent about 19 minutes talking about all of the bad things, the things you cannot do, and we gave you the FAR references. We also gave you references from the United States Code. Okay, so this is how you know we are serious. This is like, look, man, this is the real deal over here. Okay, all right. Now, prime integrator is exactly what it sounds like. Think about prime as in prime contractor. Think about that word integrator. This means that you integrate yourself into the contract in a way that adds value. Okay, this means, in other words, this means you ain't just saying you can get a contract, sub it out. Get a contract, sub it out. Dude, that is like the biggest piece of horse shit ever. Like, come on, man, please, look, y'all know this channel is straightforward. It is not for the people with thin skin. That is some very idiotic shit. It will get you in trouble. You cannot just get a contract and sub it out. Why? Because you have no contract control. Now, prime integrator. You actually integrate yourself within the contracts. This means you're actually managing the subs. You're actually helping control the schedule. You're managing the compliance component. You are integrating deliverables to bring more value to the government. You actually accept some of the work and you carry the risk. You are boots on ground. So let me give you an example of that, right? Let's say, I like to use construction all the time and engineering and things like that. But let's say this is a janitorial contract or a logistics contract, all right? You are actually managing just how it says. This, in other words, you are spending time coaching and developing your workforce. So basically, you are actually functioning as an executive, okay? You control schedule, you manage compliance. This means that you are doing internal audits and checks and controls of every deliverable and compliance metric within every function of the jobs that are being performed. Make sense? You are basically boots on ground, even if you are working remotely. This means you have integrated yourself into every aspect of the job. Now, some of your subcontractors may not like that because they might feel like you're micromanaging, or they may feel like you don't know as much as them. It does not matter, because chances are most of the people who are on site doing the jobs, most of them know this, but most of the skilled laborers typically don't know a damn thing about the compliance aspect anyway. And guess what? If the paperwork isn't right, it did not happen. So they need somebody who's there day to day, whether it's remotely or showing up on site. There has to be an administrative aspect. So what you can do is integrate yourself as the management servicing official, management servicing organization. That is a legal way for you to actually be part of the team that's performing the work. This clears FAR Part 52 and keeps you out of trouble. Now, so basically, if you do this, FAR Part 52.215-23, as I've stated, write it down. If you add real value, you are not operating a pass-through scheme. Now, let's do this. FAR Part 44.201-1, consent to subcontract. Subcontracting is allowed with oversight. FAR Part 52.244-2, subcontracts. You must control, document, and disclose who your subs are. All right, now let's get to the next segment. Teaming agreements. That is legal as well. Just like the first thing that we talked about, which was management servicing organizations. And just to reiterate, right, recap, because I know sometimes I'll talk really fast. So that first point was you can integrate yourself as a prime integrator by performing on the contract as the management servicing organization, which means you are controlling and managing all of the administrative components. That clears the FAR. Now, but let's go back to the next part, okay? Teaming agreements, legal. Your FAR anchor is FAR Part 9.601, contractor team arrangements. FAR 9.603, policy. The government recognizes teaming when disclosed. And let's back up. FAR Part 9.601, contractor team arrangements. Teaming is officially recognized. Go back down to the other one again. FAR Part 9.603, policy. The government recognizes teaming when disclosed. So look at the government is actually allowing you to tell them that you are teaming so that you can actually have the capacity to get this done. It does not get better than that. This references the last 2 videos ago that I put out. It's very, very easy. They're literally telling you everything you can do. And if you're doing something different, they're telling you how they want to be told. So basically, look, contracting with the federal government, it's like they're giving you the test and also giving you the answers. They want you to read the answers and then hand the answers into them. So this is literally a matter of not being lazy. All right. 3, joint ventures, totally legal. FAR Part 9.601. JVs are legal if real, documented, and disclosed. It's that simple. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about joint ventures versus teaming agreements. So, joint ventures is typically when you guys have an ongoing venture and you're doing many things together. I like that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite arrangement because it shows that you two have become a solid conglomerate. Teaming agreements, you're basically it's like you're joint venturing, but just for the purposes of this solicitation or an unsolicited proposal or a sole source award. All right. Now, subcontracting is legal with limits. Let's go back to FAR Part 52.219-14, limitations on subcontracting. You must perform a minimum amount of work yourself on set-asides. FAR Part 52.215-22. You must tell the truth about who does what. Dude, org chart, roles and responsibilities, Gantt charts. It's that simple. You don't understand what those things are? Org charts, roles and responsibilities, Gantt charts, google.com. Let's be adults. You don't need me to flash everything on the screen for you, all right? You're not 2 or 3 years old. I'm giving you the game. Look it up. Put some work into this, all right? Let's get it. Let's get this. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about the laziness problem. This is a note that I made personally. This is a leadership moment. People don't fail because the FAR is hard. They fail because they won't read. The FAR is public. The law is public. In fact, you can type in words like FAR, United States Code, statutory requirements in contracting, and it will give you a whole list of things that you can literally sit there and read for a couple of minutes to make your proposal stronger, to make your operation stronger. This is not hard because guess what? The consequences are the consequences are public as well. Everything you need to know is already there. All right. So, and unfortunately, people sit around doing this all day with reels, all day long. And you know what's happening? That is training your brain not to be able to focus on one thing for longer than 30 damn seconds. In some cases, some of you can't focus on something for 5 seconds without veering off, and you wonder why your business can't get moving. You got to have an attention span. Contracting with the federal government, it does require it requires an attention span. It requires you to be able to focus on something. It's that simple. That's the hard part, being able to sit down and focus. That's the hardest thing about putting together a contracting proposal. Dude, with a lot of this stuff, you don't even need consulting. These accelerators and all this stuff. Look, not knocking, okay? But look, these score mentors, accelerators, these people, in most cases, they can't really help you outside of stuff that's already available. In many cases, a lot of these so-called score mentors and people like that, look, I'm gonna say this as a former contracting officer who tried using them when I first got started in business. A lot of these people are absolutely fucking useless. In fact, most of them are. Because why? They're not really, I could see if they were allowing you to access funding or resources, things that will actually help get you moving in business, but they're basically, it's almost like they're pre-programmed. They're going off of a script. You're coming in there hoping that they can get you some resources to help you get your business moving, and they're sticking to a script. If you come in there trying to ask them for help in an area where something that could really be useful, what do they typically tell you? Oh, well, your credit got to be this. Your financials got to be this. You got to go talk to a bank. You got to talk to a credit union. The same people who's going to use those same outdated metrics that have nothing to do with whether or not you can run the business that you want to do. Everything you need is already out here for you. Now, if you need consulting from people like myself or others out there who've actually been in this lane as the people on the inside, that's a whole entirely different thing. And it's an honorable thing because you're actually learning from those of us who've actually created the evaluation criteria by which contracts are awarded and set the competitive range, which ultimately decides who gets awarded contracts and who does not. All right, let's keep this moving. Okay, let me give you another FAR anchor. FAR, part 52.215. The contractor shall be required to justify its charges. Whew. If you cannot explain it, you should not bill it. Okay? That is so huge. You do not want to put yourself in a position where you cannot explain every aspect of the job that's being done. If they call your phone, okay? If the contracting officer or the project manager calls your phone and said, hey, we noticed that you submitted this. We noticed that you submitted this. What do we call it? Give me a second here. Give me a second. This is a brain moment, and we're not going to edit this out of the video. Oh, goodness. Change order request, right? Change. That's the word I'm looking for. If you cannot justify why you need more money to be integrated into this contract, they're going to say no. It's that simple. So this is how real contractors protect themselves. Read the clauses, look them up, highlight them, build systems around them, document your work, keep receipts, manage your subs, and disclose everything. And last but not least, FAR Part 52.244-2. Once again, that's FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, FAR, Part 52.244-2. If you don't understand your subcontract, you are not ready to be a prime, period. All right, so, and just as a final warning, you need to read or regret it. Nobody gets punished for reading. People get punished for guessing, all right? If you don't read the FAR, someone else will read your invoices back to you in court. Let me say it again. If you don't read the FAR, someone else will read your invoices back to you in court. Bye.